Welcome to the Hardwood Hawgs Podcast. I'm your host, Mason Choate, joined by JC Hoops, Jackson Collier, your favorite Arkansas basketball guy. We have him actually on today. It's not just a phone call. You get to see his beautiful face on the screen if you're watching on the YouTube. And we got a lot to get to. Last time we talked to you, it was before the Auburn loss. It was before the Missouri win. So we're going to talk through those. Huge game, Arkansas, Alabama today, Wednesday. You're listening to this on Wednesday, Arkansas versus Alabama. Top 15 matchup. It's going to be huge. And before we get started, I want to remind you about Dead Soxy, because this podcast is brought to you by Dead Soxy. So Dead Soxy, premium, high-quality socks. And for our listeners, if you use code HAWGS, HAWGS, at checkout, you get 25% off all orders. That includes sale items. You just got to go to deadsoxy.com, DEADSOXY.com. Use code HAWGS at checkout, 25% off. Incredible socks. They sent all of us at HawgBeat.com some socks for Christmas, and we love them. We wear them every day. I wore them last night. I love my Dead Soxy socks, and you can get some for 25% off. All orders, even the sale items, 25% off. Use code HAWGS at checkout, deadsoxy.com. Thank you to Dead Soxy. All right, Jackson. So I don't really want to talk about the Missouri game very much. Arkansas won at home against a good Missouri team, a very good Missouri team. And then they go on the road. They lose to Auburn. And you have a little bit of, I wouldn't say freak out. We talked about this before we started recording. It's not the same freak out as you had the past two seasons with some slow starts to SEC play. But there is, a little bit to worry about when you don't have Brazil, when you don't have Nick Smith, and you're struggling to find guys to score the ball, especially when Ricky Council, is struggling to score the ball. You have to go to Anthony Black. You don't really have anybody else. Jordan Walsh goes 2 for 10 from the field. So kind of give us your thoughts from the Auburn game and where you gauge this team right now.
So really, looking at the Auburn game, it was a 13-point loss, and Arkansas didn't play all that terrible. It was a manageable deficit for most of the game. Could not hit any shots, could not hit free throws. Anthony Black was 13 out of 16 from the free throw line, but outside of him, I think the team was 6 out of 16. That's abysmal. You're not going to win basketball games. They shot under 60% from the free throw line. That's a huge difference in the game, and right there alone. Then obviously you look at that game too, 2 for 16 from the 3-point line. Auburn didn't score a ton. Like they put up 72 points. That's nothing like it's not like a offensive gauntlet. That's not a fantastic offensive performance, because Arkansas is a really good defensive team. Even though they've lost Nick Smith, even though they've lost Trevin Brazil, they're still playing really good defense. We saw that against LSU, saw that against Missouri. They held LSU to 60 points and Missouri to 68 points. Auburn got 72 points at home as a top 25 team. They're just not finding ways to score the basketball, and that's really the rub of it all. It's hard to say, gauge performance outside of, the offense is stagnant at times. Musselman has talked about guys aren't cutting as well. Some of the lineups and rotations kind of confuse me, especially in the front court offensively. Guys aren't making shots. They aren't taking good shots, and then they're missing their freebies too. I think there have been some low post guys, even some guards missing layups. Obviously we just talked about free throws. Even the open threes, they haven't been falling. So as good as they played defensively, and even when they work the offense and get open looks, they just haven't been knocking down shots. So I don't know if that necessarily equates to bad play or just not good shooting. I think you can differentiate those two things. You can have a good team that plays well that's just not a good shooting team. I think that's kind of where they're at right now, outside of, free throws. You should never miss 13 as a Division I basketball team, but I still think there's promise to the season. I know that there's been a mix of the freak out. You have some people that are like, oh, this team is terrible without Nick Smith and Trevin Brazil. Look, they're 1-2 in conference, blah, blah, blah. This is the third year in a row that they've started with a losing record in conference through 3 games. I think this year is a little bit different though, because even though they are 1-2, they're not losing games and being blown out. It's not, or they're not losing games to just like absolutely terrible teams. LSU had a bad loss last night. They lost to Florida at home by like 11 or 12 or something. Auburn hadn't played particularly well, but they are a ranked team. That was a road game, just like LSU was a road game. And those were both like they didn't look bad. Like the 13-point deficit, sure, whatever, but make your free throws, it's a lot more manageable. They didn't perform that bad. I think just the way it's just so different because they're not getting blown out by 30 points. They're not losing to Hofstra. They're not losing to Vanderbilt. But they're still finding their offensive identity. It really is a struggle when you lose two guys that you essentially built your offense around. Nick Smith was another option who could create for himself and facilitate to other people, create for other players. While Trevin Brazil's the swing four or stretch four who was shooting 39% from three, keeping the defenses honest and opening driving lanes for the guards. And that you lose both of those things when you're trying to run a 5-out, what Muss likes to call pace and space. It's just you really struggle trying to adapt and change and roll with the punches.
Well, you you kind of hit on it. So, and this is something that Eric Musselman said on Monday. You can go find the press conference on the HawgBeat YouTube. He talked about how this team, it's not like they're playing, bad teams. Like they're playing some of the top defenses in the nation. Auburn, a very, very elite defense. So was Missouri. Well, not elite for Missouri. Their offense was elite, and now you have an Alabama team who has a good defense, a really good offense. They're the number one rebounding team in the nation. So it's not going to get easier. But one thing about this team is, I'm looking on KenPom right here, and as far as D1 experience goes, they rank 275th in the nation. So it's like this is a team that, yes, they played, a good non-conference schedule for the most part. You had the Maui Invitational where you were able to hit the road, as well as the Oklahoma game. You went to North Little Rock, so like they kind of bonded. They were able to do that stuff. You also had the summer when they went to Europe, but this is still a team that is just now starting to play SEC teams. They're playing the SEC schedule. There's a lot of basketball to be played, and there's still, though you have a guy like Ricky Council, you have some of the transfers who, Makai Mitchell, Mikal Mitchell, who are older guys, they don't have SEC experience. So all of these guys, for the most part, aside from Kamani Johnson and Devo Davis, are playing SEC caliber teams for the first time. And so there's going to be that, growing pains, but also the offensive output in the first three SEC games is something to worry about, especially if, Nick Smith Jr., if he's out for even more of an extended period of time than we're expecting, you're going to need someone to step up. Now, for me, I'm holding out hope on Jordan Walsh. Like, I see it in him. I think a lot of people do. Eric Musselman said he still sees it in him. He took 10 shots against Auburn. I think that he has it in him to become, a great scorer for Arkansas. We just haven't seen it yet. A guy that we've talked about on this podcast, Makai Mitchell. You probably want to see more from him offensively, don't you think? I think he's one of those guys as well. So as far as scoring the ball, and everybody's going to say Joseph Pinion because he's a great shooter. I'll give him that. He is a great shooter, but it's not, you can't just throw Joseph Pinion out there and say, all right, find him in the corner. He's going to hit a three every time. It just doesn't work that way. So kind of talk through what you think Arkansas needs to do to fix the offense. And maybe, I mentioned those guys, but anybody else that you think could step up.
So, and I kind of mentioned this on the Truff on our premium message board. I kind of broke down what I thought one of the bigger issues is, especially obviously everybody talks about outside shooting, and that is a big issue. And teams have started going zone, packing stuff inside. I really think one of the biggest things that you can do when teams are zoning against you and you're not a good shooting team, obviously cutting more, cutting better, all that sort of stuff that Musselman already mentioned. I want to see the front court utilized more. It seems like whenever Musselman talks about Makai Mitchell, it's always talking about him in a defensive stalwart type, like, oh, he did a really good job stopping this really talented big, or he did a really good job stopping this talented big. He's a rim protector, grabbing defensive rebounds, all that sort of stuff. All of that is true, and I agree with all of that 100%. But I have seen Mekhi Mitchell this year score on over 10 different post moves down low. And I just really think he could be utilized more as an offensive piece. I mean, it's kind of not even a running joke, just something I think you even brought up in the last press conference that, Mekhi Mitchell has scored the first basket in 8 of the last 10 games or something this year. It's incredible. And, he'll get his 7 or 8 points, and it seems like a lot of his points come from, oh, well, somebody got an offensive rebound, he filled an open spot and he'll dunk it, or, oh, they fed the post and he made a post move and he'll score. But I just don't think he's getting a ton of touches, especially in that high post role. When teams run a zone, especially against Arkansas when they're not shooting well, they're daring Arkansas to take those outside shots. They're daring Devo Davis, Anthony Black, Jordan Walsh, Ricky Council, all struggling right now. They're daring them to take lightly contested threes. They're not pressured about trying to get out there and have a hand in their face all the way. They'll halfway contest and dive back in to try to crash the glass. I think one way you can really help that is if you start feeding the high post. Go through Mekhi Mitchell, or even if you want to run a high-low set with a second big, if you want to run Jalen Graham in there for some offense, run through the high post, have some cutters diving. It goes back to what Musselman is already talking about. More cutting, more action, more movement. Feed the high post, have those guys dive. You'll have I think one thing that always worked on a high post is either a stagger dive or just like a simple one-man cut through. So you'll have say the post entry from the right side of the wing, and then ball goes in, the right side dives. And then after he dives and there's no pass, then the left side dives, and they kind of fill each other's spot. They curl back out. Mekhi can face up, do all sorts of things. I think implementing that sort of stuff would work wonders, especially if you trust Mekhi enough, and I think Mekhi is good enough. Even Jalen Graham is good enough. Try to go ISO in the post. Even though they're in a zone, they're not going to completely like a 2-3 zone. If you get it in the middle, sure, they'll collapse, but you hope that your post can pass out of the post. If you go low and say Mekhi Mitchell has a one-on-one matchup on the low block, and you have like Joseph Pinion in the corner or somebody on the perimeter, you're putting that defense in a spot where they have to choose. Do we let Mekhi Mitchell go ISO in the post, which probably they would take that risk early on. And if he scores 2 or 3 baskets in a row, what's that going to do? They're going to have to start sagging off a little bit, maybe doubling up in the post. And then Mekhi Mitchell just passes back out. And those are so much more high percentage looks than they've been getting on the perimeter, where they're just kind of working the offense for 25 seconds and someone takes a shot. I just think implementing a low post system right now, it might slow the game down a little bit. And Arkansas likes to play fast. But given what the roster is right now, you lose 2 guys for that system that you developed all offseason. I think you have to make an adjustment and really should try to attack it through the post. Trust your bigs. Mekhi Mitchell is really talented. Everybody knows Jalen Graham is a very talented offensive player. Just see what they can do in the low post and what they can do facilitating out to guards after they kind of score. Now, if it doesn't work, if it is what it is, they just collapse everything, you can't get a low post entry, then I guess you're just back to square one. And then that's where you get into, you just really need guys like Jordan Walsh and Ricky Council to knock down their open looks and to, play more aggressive. They're playing pretty aggressive, but they're just not finishing.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I really liked what I saw from Anthony Black against Auburn as well. You felt, that was kind of Maui Invitational Anthony Black. I think he and Eric Musselman both mentioned he's probably going to have to take on a little bit more of a bigger role offensively moving forward as far as scoring the ball goes. So I like what I saw from Anthony Black. I think, you talked about Jordan Walsh, Ricky Council. If you have those open shots, which the defenses for the most part, they've kind of been giving at least Jordan Walsh the open shot. Ricky Council, they don't really want to give him anything. And we kind of talked about how, Ricky, now that it's not SEC or now that it's not non-conference play, it's been a little bit tougher for him. Eric Musselman said that. He was asked hey, what are the defenses doing to kind of limit Ricky a little bit more? And he basically said, we're playing SEC teams now. It's no longer the non-conference, which makes sense. So he's going to have to figure that out. This is from evanmia.com, and I really like this guy. He has a lot of great analytics. This is Arkansas's best 5-man lineup, Jackson. And it's so there are better lineups, but they include Nick Smith and Trevor Brazile, so I can't take those into account. This is the best 5-man lineup that doesn't have Smith or Brazile in it for the Razorbacks. Anthony Black, Ricky Council, Devo Davis, Kamani Johnson, Jordan Walsh. Thoughts? I mean, I kind of just threw that on you, but what do you think?
Man, I don't know. I especially coming into the Alabama game tonight. I mean, you look at their front court, they're starting sensational freshman Brandon Miller, 6'9", Noah Clowney, another top freshman, 6'10", Charles Bediako, center, 7 foot. I just really it's not really dodging your question. It's building off of it, I guess. I don't see that lineup working against Alabama. I don't know. I don't have any of the data in front of me either. I'm honestly shocked that that's the quote unquote best lineup right now.
Well, that's statistics. So it's based off of offensive and defense. So it's based off of how many points they're outscoring opponents by when that 5 is on the lineup or on the floor. They're outscoring opponents by 32.5 points, but that's only 32.5 points per 100 possessions. I need to say that. But they've only played 67 possessions together. So it's not like that's their go-to lineup. This is the one that they're going to, and it's giving them, the most success. But statistically, that is the most successful. And I wanted to bring it up because Kamani Johnson wasn't a guy that you mentioned when we're talking about, cutters, guys who can, be better scorers. And we understand who Kamani is, the type of player he is. He's not going to be an elite offensive player, but it seems like, Eric Musselman is going to continue to put him on the floor, go get some offensive rebounds. I know that you have specific feelings about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so look, Kamani is a workhorse, and he is probably the most experienced player on this roster. He's been in the system as long as Devo Davis, and he had college experience before he came to Arkansas. So definitely the most experienced player on the roster. And there's something to be said for that. And there's something to be said for his hard work. There's something to be said for the fact that he can get offensive rebounds. But when you're going into conference play, when you're going up against a front court that's as big and as talented as Alabama, I really don't think you can run out an undersized 5 that's kind of an offensive liability. He grabs offensive rebounds and he draws fouls, doesn't make his free throws. I mean, the whole team didn't make free throws against Auburn outside of Black, but he hasn't made free throws at a high clip. He's not a terrific defender. I mean, he can do some good things and help side and generate some steals, but as far as going one-on-one against Bediako in the post or against Clowney in the post, I just don't see it. And I think tonight is a game where you almost have to change the starting lineup a little bit because of the size of Alabama. And I would lean more towards, starting Makai Mitchell and Makel Mitchell both together, having them put one on Bediako, probably put Makel on Bediako, and then put Makai on Clowney. That way Walsh can cover Brandon Miller, and then let guards be guards. You'll have AB and Council. I really think that would be more beneficial than running Kamani out there. But again, that's just me. If we're going for low post offense, if we're going for a team that's struggling offensively, I don't think putting someone out there who is mismatched in size on 3 levels of the opposition and not able to score well, I don't think that bodes well for Arkansas in this matchup.
Okay, so talking about the starting lineup, the starting lineup has been for pretty consistently Anthony Black, Ricky Council, Devo Davis, Makai Mitchell, Jordan Walsh. And that's also statistically, according to evanmia.com, the second best 5-man lineup, not including Nick Smith or Trevor Brazile. They played 100. I'm not going to do the math right now. I'm going to look like an idiot. They played a lot of possessions together. That's your starting 5. So you're saying that you think they should switch up the starting 5, which it has been Black, Council, Davis, Makai Mitchell, and Jordan Walsh, and then throw in both the Mitchell twins. Is that what you want, or do you see that could actually be a possibility?
A little bit of both. I just think Alabama has too much size. I mean, Brandon Miller's 6'9", running the 3. And they got two guys starting in the front court that are 6'10" and 7 foot. Like, that is just so much size. And Arkansas, that starting lineup that Arkansas has been trotting out. Walsh is at the 3-4, and he's a fantastic defender and he has plenty of size himself. But it's just it's oh man, that's a lot of size to make up for. I really think, I don't know what if that's the case. Like, you start both Mitchell twins, or if you start, I would probably want Mikal more, but I could see that Kamani would potentially get the start alongside Makai, just going based on who has gotten minutes so far. And then I don't know about the odd guard out there. Like, would it be Devo coming off the bench like he was earlier in the year, or would they try to change things up with Council and bring him off the bench for an offensive punch off the bench that he sat, was that against Missouri? He sat the first bit of the second half and came out and scored a ton. So I could see either one of those situations playing out as well.
I don't hate the Ricky Council off the bench thing. I don't hate that. I think that might. I mean, obviously, you're bringing a guy off the bench and Ricky Council, if that happens, that's going to provide you with an offensive spark. So, I mean, that would be interesting. I didn't think about that option. I want to kind of transition into Alabama because you've mentioned a bunch of names. We got to talk about this Alabama team. They're really, really, really good. Ranked number 4 in the nation. You've talked about Brandon Miller. He leads the SEC in points per game. He's scoring 19.1 points per game. Mark Sears, point guard, 14.7 points per game. Noah Clowney. Eric Musselman was raving over Clowney on Monday. A really deep Alabama team. Ken Palm has them as the 8th best adjusted defensive efficiency team in the nation. I mean, there's just a really, really good basketball team. You just look at all their analytics. They're really good. Tempo, according to Evan Mia, they're the number 1 tempo team in the nation. So let's just talk about it, because we talked about the line on Bet Saracen. Arkansas is a plus 1.5 point underdog. And we said before we started recording, if this game's at Alabama, you're probably talking about Alabama's favored by 5 to 6 points. Bud Walton is going to help you, but I think we still are both agreeing that Alabama is probably just ahead of Arkansas at this point in the season.
Oh yeah, definitely at this point, especially with Arkansas being down 2 of their best players. It just kind of is what it is. I'm not going to say that Arkansas is like dead in the water before the game even starts. Like, obviously you play the games for a reason. They have home court advantage. They're doing a stripe out at Bud Walton, and Arkansas always plays better at home. Most teams do, but it feels like Bud Walton is a special place for Arkansas, and teams have trouble coming in and playing at Bud Walton too. So not going to say that like, oh, they're definitely going to lose, but I mean, I think when you look at the matchup, you look at the players Alabama has healthy compared to the players Arkansas does not have healthy. I would lean towards Alabama winning this game.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I look at it and I think, Alabama has a slight edge. Most places across the country are having this game as a pick 'em, but I really think that that's just the Bud Walton factor, because as I mentioned, I think if this game's at Alabama right now, Bama's probably favored by 5 or 6, which is understandable. But all right, let's talk about Bet Saracen. Bet Saracen is the mobile sports gambling partner of HawgBeat.com. Go download the app on the App Store or the Google Play Store. Bet Saracen. They have the player props up for Arkansas and Alabama players. We talked about some props that we like before we started recording. I like Anthony Black over 3.5 assists. I think I did the math. That would have hit 5 out of the last 6 games, I believe. So let me see. Let me do the math real quick. Yeah. 5 out of the last 6. So that would have hit 5 out of the last 6. I think Anthony Black, we talked about it earlier in the episode, he's going to have to take on a slightly bigger role offensively. I think that includes scoring and facilitating the ball a little bit more. I'm going to take him over 3.5 assists. I like that one. What do you like, Jackson?
I think my first pick would be Ricky Council under 18.5 points. I think as a whole, this game is going to be pretty low scoring. Ricky Council has struggled of late. Alabama's really good defensively. I think it's going to be hard for anybody outside of maybe Brandon Miller to put up close to 20 points. I'd take the under on 18.5 on Ricky Council.
Miller's also at 18.5. Clowney's at 9.5. There was another one on here that I liked. Let me find it. Oh, Jordan Walsh. We were talking Jordan Walsh rebounds. They have his line at 4.5, over under 4.5 rebounds. We like the over on that one. You were talking about how they're kind of sending him to the offensive glass a little bit more. You like that one?
Yeah, I really like that one too. Jordan Walsh has been a great rebounder since he's been on campus. Like that when he wasn't scoring as much early on, and people were like, "Oh, what's the deal with Jordan Walsh?" He was playing really good defense and still rebounding the basketball. So I think with him crashing the glass more, because they're kind of making an emphasis on getting to the offensive glass and trying to generate extra possessions, with that and with him just being a good rebounder on the defensive side of the ball as well, I think that's a really good line.
Let's see. That would have hit the last 3 games. So he had 9 rebounds against LSU, 7 against Missouri, and 10 against Auburn. Wow. I did not know he had 10. Oh, that's right. He did have 10 against Auburn because he was on a double watch. Yeah, I like that one. 4.5. That seems like a low number for him to be averaging. However, I'm not going to do math again. He's averaging definitely over that through SEC play so far. So that's a good little bet. Let's see. What are the odds on it? Minus 125. Yeah. Okay. Go to Bet Saracen. Download the app on the Google Play Store or the App Store. All right. Before we leave, also, we have to remind you about our friends at MyPerfectFranchise.net. They are always a partner of HawgBeat.com. It is Andy Luedecke. He's helping you become a franchise owner. He's done it before. He's doing it right now. He takes you through a long, thorough process to make sure that you're set up for the best possible situation. And it also helps you out financially. If you're a displaced corporate executive, if you want to put your career in your own hands, you want to make some extra money, go talk to Andy Luedecke. It's myperfectfranchise.net, or you can call him at 404-973-9901. Tell him HawgBeat.com sent you, and he'll get you set up to put your career in your own hands. And it's a great situation. MyPerfectFranchise.net. Very thankful for them. All right, big game in Bud Walton Arena tonight. Arkansas, Alabama. Number 15, number 4 should be a packed house. I really, really need to get me one of those little Bud Walton Arena figurines, dude. I want one of those so bad. So if anybody's listening to this and you're going to the game and you have the opportunity to grab an extra one, please DM me on Twitter. I would love to take you up on getting one of those. I really want.
Me too. I'll throw my hat in that too.
Okay. All right. Well, we will talk to everybody next week on the Hardwood Hawgs Podcast. Thank you, Jackson, and thank you, everybody, for listening. Go visit HawgBeat.com, HawgBeat.com. A lot of great content over there, and we'll talk to you next week.